You know the saying, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. The groundwork is being laid for lockdowns 2.0. Some might even say lockdowns 3.0 at this stage, because we had that respite between that first lockdown and then they doubled down on it, even though they knew that the data on lockdowns was terrible for children, terrible for families,
Yes.
terrible for businesses. So lockdowns 2.0, lockdowns 3.0, it doesn't really matter. But there is now a renewed push for mandates, mask mandates, vaccine push, vaccine mandates. And I think if we, like Alex Jones has been doing an amazing job on this, if we shine enough light on this story, we can hopefully keep it from happening. We might be too late, though, because in many places it's already starting to happen. Many schools are already rolling out mask mandates, hospital services, other healthcare providers already rolling out mask mandates, forcing kids to wear masks during class in school, like in New York. Watch.
COVID cases are on the rise across the nation and in our area, which means something many of us thought we'd seen the last of is back. Businesses, hospitals, even colleges, including one in our area, reinstating mask mandates. So will there be more to come as we head into the fall? And are people ready to be forced to mask up again?
Oh, yeah. When are you ever ready to be forced to do anything? Well, you know, honey, we're going to be next week. We got to start to be really think about this. We got to be forced to mask up again and get forced whatever they're going to shove down our throats.
Right. It's interesting that he's using the word forced, though, because the media sort of made it seem like, oh, but masking is for everybody. You really do want to do it because you love other people and you care about old people and all of that stuff, right? At least he's using the right words. It would be forcing, again, given that the data, we're going to show you what the CDC says about masking in a second. This is not coming from them, surprisingly.
Yeah. So this is really kind of like deja vu all over again. The exact same pieces are starting to come together in a repeat of February 2020, when you had the New York Times, the Washington Post. I was going through the archival data from those news sources today, and then comparing it with their new news sources, new news articles today and over the past few days from NPR, from New York Times, from Washington Post. All basically pushing this fear-mongering around this latest COVID variant, trying to get us all scared about it. News agencies across North America are rolling out the same experts to sort of push masking and vaccines again. They brought these people back on their air on a repeat of exactly what they did in 2020. Watch.
With children returning to classrooms and with COVID, RSV, and the flu circulating.
Big breath.
Experts are preparing for a possible triple-demic, with this infectious disease specialist saying masks should make a return.
Particularly in the school environment or where I work at a university and some of the post-secondary institutions, I think whether you have a mandate or you have a strong recommendation for people to wear masks, I think that's reasonable.
Okay, that's what he thinks. Mm-hmm. Okay, keyword there, think, because what is he basing this on? It's actually not the CDC. The CDC doesn't even try to make the claim that masks prevent transmission anymore. Their website is heavy on the word may. Literally, there's no data behind it. Like if you go to the CDC, it says masking may prevent transmission, but there's no data there. The Epoch Times asked the CDC if they wanted to suggest mask mandates. Here's what they said. And it's interesting just how vague and non-committal this speech is. A spokesperson said that, hospital admission levels are currently low, and that the agency recommended that transportation workers, travelers, passengers, and others get the vaccine before they travel. That it says anyone may choose to wear a mask in crowded or poorly ventilated indoor areas. But then again, that's very heavy on your choice. The agency currently doesn't have any mandate in effect, and the CDC's advice for individuals and community around COVID are tied to hospital admissions levels, which are still low. They are increasing because we're heading into the fall. Earlier, a CDC spokesperson told NBC that there have been no agency discussions about mask mandates, which come as a handful of hospitals and offices around the country start imposing them. There's also been speculation that federal officials may bring them back, but the CDC hasn't issued any updated guidelines regarding mask mandates. So if someone tells you that they're going back to mask mandates, it certainly is not because of the CDC or the WHO, again, which is heavy on the maybe about masks, but no mandates. So this whole follow the science. These are the authorities that even YouTube says now we must defer to for medical experts. They don't seem to be very bullish on the mask mandates. No, so this is just local authorities making decisions out of their ass.
Yeah, or because of pressure from parent groups or something like that. I don't know. Or maybe the biopharmaceutical complex is trying to encourage these people that actually fund their campaigns. I mean, we showed you what was happening in Canada the other night with these protests, people going out and protesting because they want masks back in place. Could you imagine such a thing? They get a little taste of tyranny, and they're like, yeah, give me some more of that tyranny. Let me go out. Let me ask for more of that. So if you're local, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and the unfortunate thing is a lot of people were fooled the first time because it was possible that it was true, right? I mean, a lot of people listen to the mainstream media for whatever reason. And I think the number will be smaller this time for sure of people that will comply, but there's still a large number of people out there that believe what they're being told.
Well, put a pin in what you just said, which is about fewer people this time may fall for this. And I think that this is a real concern, particularly from the White House and also from biopharmaceutical industry. The Biden administration has begun procuring COVID-19 equipment. They're already doing it and hiring advisors on safety protocols for COVID-19. This is what the Biden administration is currently doing. This is now confirmed, according to an exclusive report from the War Room. President earlier this week, of course, you'll remember we played it here on the show, said that he'll have a vaccine ready to go in weeks and wants everyone to take the vaccine. The White House press team, though, this is amazing to watch the White House press corps. They are basically just stenographers for the imperial power that is the United States. The White House press team likes to be basically handing questions directly to the White House, on a silver platter. It's almost like they've been pre-fronted with these questions from the White House. Hey, can you guys educate Americans on how to take the vaccine? How are you guys going to do that? It seems like Americans aren't really ready to take this next round of vaccine. How are you, the White House, going to really educate Americans about the positivity of taking this vaccine? What are you guys going to do to really drive home that people need to get vaccinated?
That's just the wrong question. It's not why do you think that's necessary at all? That's the right question.
No, instead she asks, how are you going to educate people about taking the vaccine? So few people took it this last time with boosters. How are you going to really drive home the message to make sure people get this? Watch.
It's going to be available in mid-September. The CDC data says that only 56 million Americans, 17% of the population, received the updated shot last year. What type of public messaging campaign or effort will the administration, the White House, be doing starting in mid-September to get people to get that shot, to get more people than last year to get that shot?
As you know, Karen, this is an issue that you have followed very closely for the past 2 years, and you have known that this administration, when it comes to informing the American people about these vaccines, about the different tools that this president and this administration has put forward, we have really put informing Americans as a priority. And so we'll continue to do that. We know that COVID-19 vaccinations are the safest protection for avoiding hospitalization, long-term health outcomes, and death. And that is why we are going to continue to encourage Americans to stay up to date on their vaccines. And so you'll hear more from us on that. And as you know, that is something when it comes to informing Americans, American families about about the vaccine. We certainly have been really something that we've put at the forefront as we move forward with our comprehensive approach to dealing with this pandemic.
Yeah, it's a big word salad. It's a big word salad.
Go to the White House with my boobs out if I'm a transgender person, but I better have a mask on.
Yeah,
right?
You can go naked to the White House now, but you have to wear a mask.
Excuse me, Karine, David Foster, Redacted News. I'd like to. Is there any way you could possibly throw up the chart that shows the data that you're saying that it helps decrease death and hospitalizations and stuff? Could you please throw that up on the?
No, I cannot.
I've been very clear about that.
I've been very clear before.
I've been very clear about that.
The president has said that he believes this is the case, and
our comprehensive approach. I've been very clear about our comprehensive approach about what this administration is doing. It's just a big word salad, and they're going to stand up there and continue to push this garbage on the American people. And we're going to, it's going to be interesting to hear what Congress has to say as they drag them before, hearings on this, because they're diverting American dollars right now, American tax dollars, for procurement for getting equipment, for going to pay the biopharmaceutical company billions more for these new vaccines, Moderna and Pfizer, all ready to roll out their new vaccines. They have them ready to go. Ready to go. In the next few weeks, they'll be out. They'll be out churning these puppies out once again. The Gateway pundit previously reported that the Biden regime is preparing to reinstate full COVID-19 lockdowns, beginning with the mask mandates for TSA and airport employees. A number of people I spoke with today said at airports, they're seeing a huge increase in the number of people wearing masks, not only just travelers, but also attendants, TSA agents and so forth wearing masks at airports. Let us know in the chat. Are you seeing that as well in your travels? More people wearing masks. And InfoWars was first to report on this just a few weeks ago about this plan from the TSA. Now, the White House saying, no, not so fast. We don't have any plans in place for that. Okay, well, we'll just wait and see. And I think by shining a light on this, by really making sure that you are out there speaking out about you will not stand for this, can really force them to rethink their policy, make sure that they are not going to put this in place. So I hope that there's not a full-scale mandate in place. I hope that there's not some sort of full-scale push for vaccines, but we see where it's going, and state and local governments are already doing it. Texas, though, stamping their feet down, saying absolutely not. We're going to make it illegal for any kind of forced mandates here in the state of Texas. Good for them. I think maybe they learned their lesson from last time. But the new messaging, though, they are telling us about on television right now is that catching COVID a second time could be far worse. So you're going to start to hear this now. You're already starting to hear this. I've seen it pop up in a couple of places. I'm not going to highlight just one example here. But the next time you get COVID, it's going to be more severe. That's why, according to these experts, you need to get a vaccine. You might have gotten it once before. You might have gotten it once before, but now it's going to be more severe. That's why you need to get a vaccine this time. This is the new messaging. Go ahead. Watch.
Tick right now. According to the CDC's latest data, both hospitalizations and deaths are up about 21% in the most recent week of data. It's important to note that's off a low base, so it's still not as high as we've seen previously in the pandemic, but there is more COVID going around right now. Now, in terms of the risks people look at beyond hospitalizations and deaths, of course, there are things like long COVID, the risks of reinfection, and then, of course, if we remember early on in the pandemic, there was something that affected kids specifically called MIS-C. It was this sort of inflammatory response that could happen about 2 to 6 weeks after infection. The good news is that with vaccination and the built-up immunity, the risks of most of these things have declined. But there is still a risk of long COVID, perhaps less than 10% with vaccination, according to one doctor's estimate. In terms of reinfection, though, there are some studies suggesting that getting infected with COVID a second time can actually have a slightly higher risk of being more severe. So that is one reason that doctors say it's still not a good idea to be casual about catching COVID right now.
Who's casual about catching COVID?
Our pediatrician.
I mean, I don't understand what's casual about. You just live your life. You live your life. It's, who's casual about getting sick at all? I don't want to get sick. I'm sick now. I don't like go out and be like, I'm very cavalier about it.
No, because you have a man cold, my darling.
I do. I have a man cold right now. Yeah. You can see it in my eyes.
Yeah, but that also implies like if being casual is just living your life, then they're literally like painting the picture of you should be running around in fear.
Yeah, exactly. It's fear mongering. It's fear mongering. It's fear porn. Yeah. And that's why the New York Times, CNN, MSNBC, all of these guys are having like sort of wall to wall coverage right now of, including in every hour of their broadcasts is about this new COVID variant and being very worried about it. Basically, CNBC, MSNBC, you name it, they're all doing the same thing.
Well, because I think the reason she's saying like you shouldn't be cavalier about it is because, in the last couple of days, we've had meetings with our pediatrician and general practitioner and mentioned that we had COVID in our family. And they literally were like,
who cares?
Yeah, if you're not really all that bad, there's not much, we need to be worried about. You're going to get better. If you don't get better, then come back and we'll treat the symptoms. But they did not at all flinch at the message of COVID. The news media is saying that's the wrong response. What she fails to mention, though, is that vaccination is now a risk factor for new COVID. Here's the CDC's warning on the new sublineage BA.2.86, which we're calling what are we calling it? Varroa. Now, notice what we highlighted there. Let's zoom into that, saying BA.2.86 may be more capable of causing infection in people who have received COVID vaccines, meaning that vaccination is now a risk factor for infectious COVID. She didn't mention that, actually. She actually said more important to get vaccinated, which puts you at risk.
Huh. Yeah.
So interesting. She didn't say that.
Yeah, and I love her whole report centered around. She's like one doctor's opinion, doctor.
Because you can always find some doctor, right?
Yeah, I could call Peter Hotez right now and like get his opinion on any of this stuff.
Yeah,
I could call Dr. Scott Gottlieb, who's all over CNBC, who's on the board of Pfizer, who, by the way, over the past few days has been all over CNBC and CNN, by the way, and he's been pushing this new narrative about the vaccine and COVID. So again, this is why we need to be very, very careful. And it's a slow, it's like a little slow burn that suddenly what's the right idiom here?
It's a slow boil.
It's a slow boil.
It's like frog in the pot.
But once a lot of these communities, once the sort of horse is out of the barn, then it's hard to put the horse back in, right? Oh my God, we've got this RSV problem now. We've got this flu problem. So all these kids need to wear masks to school, exacerbating asthma problems, pneumonia, behavioral issues as a result of it. President Trump has a message. He just released a message last night for COVID lockdowns and mandates. Here's what he had to say.
The left-wing lunatics are trying very hard to bring back COVID lockdowns and mandates with all of their sudden fear-mongering about the new variants that are coming. Gee whiz, you know what else is coming? An election. They want to restart the COVID hysteria so they can justify more lockdowns, more censorship, more illegal drop boxes, more mail-in ballots, and trillions of dollars in payoffs to their political allies heading into the 2024 election. Does that sound familiar? These are bad people. These are sick people we're dealing with. But to every COVID tyrant who wants to take away our freedom, hear these words: we will not comply. So don't even think about it. We will not shut down our schools. We will not accept your lockdowns. We will not abide by your mask mandates. And we will not tolerate your vaccine mandates. They rigged the 2020 election, and now they're trying to do the same thing all over again by rigging the most important election in the history of our country, the 2024 election. Even if it means trying to bring back COVID. But they will fail because we will not let it happen. When I'm back in the White House, I will use every available authority to cut federal funding to any school, college, airline, or public transportation system that imposes a mask mandate or a vaccine mandate. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, he's got some huevos, because I just worry that that's going to be construed as inciting something. You know, he's already facing charges anytime he says something like that, because I don't know. Do you see where I'm going with this?
What, when he says we're not going to comply?
He says,
we're not going to comply.
And then if somebody maybe gets violent about that, could we blame it? I mean, he is not facing equal justice under the law. We know this. Right? Yeah, whether you like him or not, he is not facing equal justice under the law. And
so they'll construe it a certain way.
That's what I'm worried about. If I were him, I would be, well, I'm not, right?
Yeah,
so,
you're not.
Because I'm afraid and he's not. So I'm like, okay, but you already are in trouble. Do you see where I'm going with this? Okay.
I do.
And I just want to share one other thing that concerns me is, like, when this first was starting, all they could talk about was mRNA. But you notice in this one, they're not saying what type it is. They're just saying vaccine. They're not going to say a single word about, like, probably what's in it or anything, because we were able to, do research on mRNA when they said that. So this one is just oddly quiet about what it even is.
Yeah.
That concerns me.
Yeah.
Right.
What sort of trials has this been through? Again, I come back to, is it still under emergency authorization? Like President Biden declared us that we're not in a COVID emergency anymore. So how do we have emergency authorization for these new shots?
Well, and also the FDA said that now the medication that I don't even know if we still can say that starts with an I, that is a viable solution now. You can use that. So the whole point of emergency use is if there's nothing else on the market that can work for treatment, but they have now said you can indeed use that for treatment. So therefore, they should not be able to get emergency use.
Right. Yeah. Great point. Yeah. Nothing else is available mysteriously, but it is. Go ahead, Philip.
Well, the emergency is declining profits for Pfizer on the COVID vaccine.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the emergency.
Right. Yeah. Exactly right. And that's a huge concern. We're seeing, of course, they're trying to figure out how can they increase profits by putting out this fear of long COVID. Like that news reporter was just talking about long COVID. Like, oh, that's the fear now. It's long COVID or double severity. If you already had COVID once before, it's going to be even worse this time. That's the fear mongering.
Well, what do we know about this new strain, Virola? We're going to refer to fellow YouTuber John Campbell. He explains that we know next to nothing about this new strain. In fact, there is even speculation that it could be easier than previous strains. Watch what he says based on current available medical data.
Yet there's no evidence that it's going to be more transmissible than any other variant. And the fact that there's so many changes to the spike protein might mean it might not fit into the ACE2 receptor and may actually not infect cells very well at all. We don't know that yet, but despite this, UK government is panicking away and has announced these dramatic acceleration to the vaccination programs. And of course, in recent videos, we've looked at all the complications that go with vaccine, the high rate of adverse reactions. We've looked at, of course, we're not saying there's any conflict of interest here, but we've looked at the revolving door phenomena and all sorts of things, and yet they want to bring this vaccination program forward.
All right. In fact, the World Health Organization has not yet classified Virola, this variant, as concerned. More research is needed to understand why the severity of this variant and its impact on public health. And in fact, John Campbell points out that what we do have from the British Medical Journal seems like it does not necessitate vaccination of entire populations. Watch.
There's no indication at all that it would cause more severe disease. It's the SARS coronavirus too, and we have a lot of cross-immunity. The British Medical Journal, but scientists do not expect it to be much different from the previous Omicron strains currently in circulation. I agree. So why all the panic? Very strange reaction. So President Biden asked Congress for another $1.4 billion to vaccinate everyone in the United States over the age of 6 months. The panic in the UK, you could argue, is probably a little less because we're only wanting to vaccinate those more at risk and, more concerningly, healthcare workers. But yet, a panic based on essentially no information at all. Strange but true.
Strange but true. But the numbers don't lie, and as Philip pointed out, Pfizer's profit right now. This is a big concern. Look at Pfizer. This is a year chart, year to date Pfizer profits.
Yeah, that's sad.
Oh my God, I have to go get vaccinated right now.
You better. Yeah, you need to do your part to help Pfizer. Look at this. Look at August 31st, 2023. Look how far down their stock price is right now. I mean, it's like half.
They did have a meeting. They did have a meeting where they forecasted a great fall for sales. Okay. Somehow they kind of know that they're going to have a great sales. Yeah, they did.
I mean, I guess they can always count on the fall, when all the mainstream media does their bidding for flu season.
Yeah.
Right? It's always there for them.
Yeah.
There you go. Let us know your thoughts on this in the comments below. Don't fall for it. Don't fall for the COVID fear-mongering, guys. Stand strong when they tell you about these lockdowns. I saw somebody, today making a great point. Like, go out there, join your local school boards, be a part of it, and tell these schools, absolutely not. We are not going into lockdown mode. We are not going to go for mask mandates. It's absolutely devastating for our children. Share with them the studies that we've shared here on the show, the new updates on particularly how bad this has been and how toxic these things are. Share it with people so they are educated about it. And these people aren't just going blindly along like the sheep from the Pink Floyd song. Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.